today. Yes, we know 94.4 is having a technical issue this morning for folks who are trying to log on to radio. That's being attended to. But remember that our live streams are up on YouTube and on Facebook, and want to say welcome as well to our audiences on KTN. As we get into Kenya's biggest conversation for the second hour, we already have our guest in the studio. And in the name of Bruto Arab Kirwa, he's here with us today, and we're looking at a number of things as we get into the conversation. Cabinet nominations, cabinet vetting, that has all been taking place. Wanakira, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well.
Happy New Year.
It is true we've not seen each other this year.
Yeah, that's true.
Happy New Year to you.
Yeah, thank you.
They normally ask then, how is the year taking you?
Well, I think it's too early to make a very clear analysis of the year. But of course, we are doing land preparation in Kitale with the hope that we are going to start planting at the advent of the rains on the 22nd of March or thereabout. And everything seems to be moving well.
We know that the rains will start on the 22nd of March.
Yeah, they do it around our place. It's the equinox. So usually about the 20th, you should actually be doing dry planting. Okay. By 22nd, the rains will come. And as you know, in 1 week that you lose after the onset of the rains, you lose 10% of expected yields. That's the way it is.
Wow.
And that's the rule.
It's like a science. Well, it is a science, I guess.
It is a science. Thank you.
One should go to Kitale.
I'm telling you.
The place is beautiful.
I hear.
Beautiful.
I hear it's beautiful.
I visited it. That's why I'm speaking thus.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
I'm extending my invitation to you, especially around May, when everything is green.
You should be careful. You know, we'll take you up on the invitation. We'll take you up on the invitation.
No, that as long as you remind me, I'll be willing.
Sawa.
Asante.
Let's tell you about something that's happening with young people in the country and about how they're able to match their skills and talents to opportunities through the KCB 2G Ajiri program.
Yeah, so KCB has realized that there is a problem in the country which is all about unemployment. And if I could just ask, how many numbers, top of your head, do we have entering the labor market, unemployed youth every year, annually?
Well, I may not have the numbers exactly, but I know it's a huge number, right from every institution, whether those who are leaving primary school, secondary school, tertiary institutions, including various universities, the numbers are mind-boggling.
Yeah, so they stand at actually 1 million, which is between the ages of 18 to 34, which is 12.7%, the number that you're talking about. And even the government realizes that it's a problem. Remember, the manifesto will create 1 million jobs, and it is the exact number that we are addressing here. But KCB says, all right, we realize there's a problem, but you're coming in with a solution. And the solution they're bringing in is to make sure that those who dropped out of school and have some skill, they are upskilled on that. And those that also went to school, they do not have jobs, they take them in back to class and train them. After that, they're given certificates through NITA, which will enable them, first of all, be able to ply their trade, improve on their skills.
Make sure that whatever is coming, there is an offtake in the market.
Absolutely.
I have in mind issues like various projects at the constituency level, where everybody is a mason, and yet they don't have basic skills. And yet there are people who have done masonry up to a certain level who should be absorbed at that particular stage.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, that's way to go into it. And you're in the hot seat this morning. And before we get into some of these hot matters, let's talk about skills, because we know there's a whole vetting program going on right now. CT is going to welcome you, the proverbs from Uganda this week.
Yes, it's a landlocked country in East Africa, neighbored by Kenya in the east, Sudan in the north, DRC in the west, Rwanda and TZ. An interesting country, this one. The features that I liked about it, the one which actually caught my attention were two.
Yes.
Bird watching, the variety of birds that you find in Uganda because of the rich forests that they have. They're not like us who just cut everything in sight. They tend to keep their trees. Yes, as we do. Everything must be charcoal at some point or the other. And then we don't replace it. But that's us. But
that's true.
In addition to that, they have this amazing feat. They have lions, yes, but these are tree climbing lions.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Something else that we need to know about Uganda. While in Kenya, 80% of our land is semi-arid. In Uganda, it's almost the other way around.
Yes, it is.
80% of their land is fertile.
Arable.
Arable.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
So, and that is why even during the darkest and bleakest times, the country could feed itself.
That's it.
So something we seem to have a problem with, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yes.
Yes. The proverb, a dog with a bone in its mouth cannot bite you.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting. And I think we can have a lot of parallels even in our political situation. Some of the individuals who are biting the government the other day, when they were given small positions in government, they have kept quiet. Or they are singing praises for the government.
There's something in their mouth.
There's something in their mouth, regardless of the value.
He said regardless of the
Of
value.
the value, because at times it's a bone that is dry, but because there's still some
Remnants.
of some feeling of nyama, they think there is a lot of meat inside.
Or some smell of the soup.
So at times when somebody is making a lot of noise, give him something to keep him busy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he'll shut up. Or at least temporarily.
Yes.
Okay, well, I guess that's a good place to jump off into this conversation,
Asante.
Kirua, this morning. And here we are, yet again, going through cabinet nominations, the vetting process. A parliamentary select committee sat over the last couple of days, and I think today we're starting to see some, decisions coming out of that. We gave the, illusion of a bicycle that's wrapped in wrapping paper around the wheels and the handlebars. You can see what it is, but you don't. But somebody's still asking you to guess what is, behind the wrapping. And that's how we kind of feel with cabinet nominations now, and then into the appointment process. Even though we do see sometimes the hard questions being asked, we're almost sure that these folks who've been nominated will be given the green light.
Of course, he extended this emasculation into Parliament, ensuring that Parliament does not have the capacity to think on its own feet or even make decisions at variance with the position that it takes. The third position was, of course, to bring in various political entities that we used to refer to as dynasties, starting with the Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga, and of course, a visit to Ishaweri. All those is a way of trying to galvanize everything around one person. And therefore, if there is any nomination, it's just a charade. It is very clear that the president, if he respected the other institutions, would also be careful on who he chooses. He would also be careful on the kind of background of the individuals he has chosen, and also make sure that those individuals fit not only the requirements, but also the critical mass of their own capacity, their integrity, and their ability to perform.
Waziri, I hear you saying essentially that the president has taken what he can from each and every entity that we speak of, whether it's political parties, whether it is parliament, whether it is cabinet, and essentially run roughshod and used those for his own personal gain. Whether we're talking about an election coming in 2 years, whether we're talking about the perception of power, you're essentially saying that he has usurped power from every possible place to his advantage.
Yes, that's exactly what he has done. Remember when there was this Rigathi Gachagua impeachment, they moved with a lot of speed, almost at night. When does government printer close? At night, were Tangula gazettes that he has already been impeached, and the same night, Amason Kingi gazettes in the Senate that there's going to...
What as being sacrosanct, and then you justify the position you've then taken. Am I speaking out of turn, or am I saying something that we see every day?
Yes, we're saying something that we see, and it is informed by a number of factors, one of which we have not institutionalized various apparatus of state. We've allowed them to be around the personality, or we have made it convenient to take it around the community. That's why even the appointments that the president has done, he has been visiting the leaders of those regions, and therefore he allows him to make a decision on who is to be appointed, whether it's directly the 4 or 3 appointees or 5.
By people in leadership that you can expect them to be done, because our lived experience is that the complete opposite happens. Yes.
Well, I'm happy nowadays that with the advent of the public taking that space, the official opposition is now the public, is no longer in the political realm.
Yeah.
Having taken that space, even some of us, really all of us are potential job seekers, given the fact that
that is a very honest statement. Yes.
But at times we resist because we fear what would be the avalanche of problems visiting us. Of course, I would easily be tempted when you see there is a appointee for Ghana, High Commissioner to Ghana, has refused. Then I say, now with my masters in international,
remains independent. Okay,
That's what they say.
Okay, then comes in two people who are in Jubilee, because William Kabogo was not in Jubilee. He had his own party.
Yeah.
Tuendelee mbele, tuko pamoja, something of that sort.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's his own independent party.
Yeah.
But every one of those come from the mountain. Okay, so what are we saying? And yet we have an immediate former deputy president who is spitting fire and speaking brimstone daily about the misdeeds of the government that just a few months ago he was part of.
Okay. So then what was your question, Dennis?
My question is, with all these matters to do with the appointment, there is a process in the Constitution which should be vetting, which should go to Parliament. But Parliament appears as though they've also ceded power because they're being controlled. Their television sets, the guy with the remote is changing the channels as he wishes. So in terms of these appointments meeting the requisite standards as enshrined in the law, how do we as Kenyans, those complaining of who need the change,
human resource capacity building in those ministries, and what you need to do is to have that helicopter view and to see how you can make use of every piece of human resource in the ministry. Allow me just to give a small example.
Right.
When I was the Minister for Agriculture, 2003, 2008, when we went there, we realized that the ministry had very low morale. And I tried to understand what was going on. Then I realized the main challenge was the human resource component. There were some people who had been in the same job group for 13 years. And yet it's supposed to be every 2 years or 3 years, you are reviewed and you have a chance to move from one job group to the other. It may not be a lot of money. It may be 2,000 shillings, but that's a lot of money for a civil servant. And also the fact that you are not in the same grade for 13 years. My worry is that it is what the French call fait accompli. By the time somebody is nominated by the president, unless the president changes his mind midstream, like that of Stella Soy, the performance is not really anything that is to go by. I've seen some of them who should actually be rejected by the committee, even in the first round of half an hour, because they don't seem to know a bit about any of the ministries. But there you are, they go through, then they become part of public ridicule, because the president does not believe any other institution ought to operate independent of him. He believes he knows everything, he's an expert in every field of study. You remember the other day when he was talking about vaccination in West Pokot, he said, me as a scientist. You know, a scientist is not all-round scientist. You are either a scientist in land development, a scientist keen to issues of livestock diseases, but you cannot be a scientist who knows everything. And you cannot be telling us about vaccination, which is like marubaini, that is for all diseases. It must be specific to disease. Is it anthrax? It is ECF? Or what kind of disease are you going to tell us about vaccination? So the president has misled the public. The other day he was saying, as a father, we are all fathers. Yeah.
Let's take a break at this point, because I think now we're getting into some of these issues whereby you need to actually have, a spotlight on them, and to say that if we look at cabinet and the way in which it is, constituted. These individuals have a duty to deliver development agenda for government. But if now what you're saying is that, essentially these nominations are political in nature, trying to get as much in terms of support on your side, then what happens to Kenya in terms of its development agenda if you're being selected to do something purely politically? We will take a break and come back. Former Agriculture Minister Kipruto Arab Kirwa is our guest this hour, and we're looking at some of these issues when it comes to nominations of cabinet, their vetting and their eventual appointment. What does it portend for the country? We'll take a break and look at weather and traffic, and we'll be back right after this.
When I was in Facebook, I got an advertisement from KCB. They were advertising scholarship, and there were only 2 colleges. I applied in building technology. They told me I secured that full scholarship. So I did 3 months classwork. So KCB facilitated something like 10,000, that is for 3 months. Actually, what I realized, even they were giving stipends for those people, for those students who are coming from far.
Our Kipruto Arab Kirwa is our guest this hour. We're looking at a lot of these nominations, and I really have to ask this question as we are going this. I mean, alluded to it before. But, if the development of the nation and the development of governance and leadership is top of the agenda, which it should be, one would assume that that's what it was, how then do you find a nexus between what you want to do politically and what you should do from a governance point of view? We know that it's very difficult to divide or to separate these positions from the politics of it all. But can you have a balance? Can you strike a balance? And if individuals are being chosen purely for political...
A number of things within 100 days, he was going to do all these within this particular period. Then you also realize that the resources were not as much as he had already promised the public. So in the process, he was forced to break some of the promises or make some of the statements that were not in tandem with the reality of the day. The other issue that I still believe that we can still advise him is when a president gives an order, he should have been able to check all the other aspects of it so that his orders flow smoothly. Otherwise, he should not talk unless he's sure the processes are right. So in the process, the public was scared for the first 6 months, 2003. And in June of that year, he appointed Francis Muthaura as head of public service. He stayed with him for the entire period that he served. What was unique about Muthaura? You as a minister, if you went to see Muthaura, you take a very nice notebook, a black book, write everything that you've requested, and in the intervening period, you will be able to tell you this has been done, this cannot be done because of 1, 2, 3, so that the government is in communication. Now, when you bring somebody who was dealing with issues of procurement, he thinks everything is about procuring people into government. He doesn't realize that it's about delivery of services. So the whole problem is crowded by the fact that head of public service today is somebody who thinks that because they're in government, of every department. For example, if they wanted to appoint somebody like Muga and is an officer in my ministry, they would inform me that we want to elevate him to a certain position, and we need somebody in that particular position he has been holding. And they will tell you before they announce. And they tell you, okay, do you have any individuals or any names to suggest? You suggest the names. By the time Muga is being elevated, somebody else of my choice or somebody we've agreed with, the head of public service. But today, even ministers, and you've heard of them, that cassette notices of even directors or various parastatals are done in State House. They just see names. They don't know some of those people. Remember, the position today, the other thing that I feel the president needs to be assisted, and even in future, if he was to be part of any government, is to say these advisors to the president, whether it's on economy or anything, should be at the level of the minister. So that they advise the minister for the time being in charge of that particular portfolio, so that the minister goes to see the president to advise the president once he has been fully advised. Because the principal advisor to the president is the vice president or the deputy president today. And every minister is advisor to the president insofar as that docket is concerned. Now, if you have two advisors advising you on the Ministry of Agriculture, then I arrive in the afternoon, I'm tired, I've come from Kitale, and I come to you and you say you know more than I do, just because you sat with your advisors in the morning. And these advisors don't know the practical reality on the ground. When I joined the Ministry of Agriculture, I had this notion, because I was coming from the street, that the officers there are lazy, they are not serious. After 8 weeks, and Kibaki, as usual, used to not give you prescription. He would ask you questions. And in the process of answering those questions, you get the answers for the problems that you took to him. So you take the problem to him, you come back with solutions, and those solutions are based on your own brief and the questions you answered.
Why would one want to control 22 different dockets of cabinet, for example, from State House?
You know, the mistake we make is that we make businessmen politicians. And if somebody is a businessman, you would wonder whether there is business in his docket, whether there is business in his docket. So he wants to run everything from the table because he's basically a businessman. He's not a politician. He's not a leader.
But would you then not argue also that our politics is actually our entire political structure?
We have had enough of you. The way ANC has done in South Africa.
But isn't that because of the fact that political parties have actually, or in their original makeup, we say that they must be ideology-based, whether you are based on the ideology of capitalism, whether you're based on the ideology of socialism, whether you're saying that what we need to do is, help people come together. So it doesn't matter who comes through the doors of the political party. They know that this is what we are after. But unfortunately, political parties, as an example, here are used as a political tool for political expediency. It is, I will form a political party, and all my cronies or my posse, as it were, around me will then, just follow in and we can do it for this purpose. Or if I've been kicked out of one party, I'm going to go and
But remember, there's something unique again about these countries that you speak of. Botswana is a population, first of all.
Yes.
And it's one community.
Yeah.
How many languages do they speak there?
Botswana.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So it isn't difficult.
Yeah.
Tanzania, Nyerere ensured that those 120 tribes...
123. Yeah.
was not the issue.
Yes.
The language unified all of them.
Kiswahili.
And they diminished the significance of tribes. And then they did something else. Presidents actually leave power to the next person.
Yes.
It sounds like a miracle.
On this continent, it's a huge miracle.
Yeah.
We followed after them, but that's what they did.
Yeah.
And it is now the norm. These retired presidents are still in the party.
Yeah.
And they still have a role.
Yes.
So you actually find that there is a check and balance that we don't have. They do.
Yes.
We have another opportunity now.
Yes.
Because we are seeing the full culmination of what it is we've been doing all these years. And we are seeing, I don't blame William Ruto for a single thing.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't.
Yeah.
If there's someone who manifests what we have become as a nation in terms of politics, it's William Ruto.
Yes. He's a good student.
Yeah, so you look at William Ruto and you realize this is what Kenyans have become. We see it because he's the president, and the things he does are the things we all do.
Yes.
The way he goes about his business is how we all go about our business.
Yeah. Muga, you are so right, because when you look at social media, various WhatsApp groups, because at times my wife assists me to look at the Kikuyu WhatsApp groups because she understands the language. I look at the action. Yeah.
It's like the only population we have in this country who seem to have something positive to say and contribute to what they don't like about the country. And it's not an indictment on the president, an indictment on the president and what he represents, and those who are the president's ilk. If you're in that particular age group, you are under indictment. What the Gen Zs are saying is there's a generation that has misrepresented them.
Yeah.
And that generation is personified in the president.
Yeah.
And everything that they stand for is the very thing they're saying, this we cannot continue with. Because it is not possible for someone to amalgamate the sort of power I hear people claiming William Ruto has without equations. People accept It's not as though there was a gun to their heads. No. They were induced.
If they were not comfortable with it, do you think, though, that they would be able to say no? I mean, I don't see anybody saying no. If anything, when we see with these nominations, where people are nominated, left, right, and center, we see them going on social media and saying, "Oh, it was with."
I would have expected Justin Muturi, who is a very good friend of mine, incidentally, to have resigned by now. Because he has only two ways. If he doesn't resign, they will impeach him or they will sack him.
It'll be interesting to see how things go. One would hope that conscience would play on the minds of people. Kipruto Arab Kiwa, thank you for always being here when the call is and for keeping these conversations alive. They need to continue. Asante sana.
It's my pleasure.
Good morning, everybody. It's 8 a.m.
Boxes, sometimes the right boxes and sometimes the wrong boxes, but it's ticking the boxes one way or the other.
Boxes are being ticked. Fantastic. Let's give you the tea that we normally do in the Situation Room, and that is with today's proverb. Siti will tell you where he's traveled to this week, and then perhaps you can tell us what you think about it. Yes?
Okay, I saw him in Emmanuel. So
You saw him in a what?
Emmanuel.
You have me at a disadvantage.
He has everybody at a disadvantage. This man is speaking about where he comes from. Let me ask you the question, my brother.
Okay.
Which country in East Africa do we associate the Rwenzori mountain ranges with?
Uganda.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, Uganda.
He's got it quite right.
Rwenzori, and it means the mountain of elephants.
And it's sometimes referred to as the mountain of the moon.
Yes, Mountain of the Moon was a name that was given by the explorers, the Europeans. Because when they came, they could see the moon
could see it
on the other side. But Nzori, in Uganda,
is elephant.
The elephant. So Rwenzori, the mountain of the elephants.
It's a country rich in wildlife and rich in diversity of wildlife. That's the country we're in this week. The proverb: a dog with a bone in its mouth cannot bite you.
Yeah, and we are seeing many dogs with their bones in their mouths in this country, and they can't bite, can't even bark. A few months ago, they were barking. So if you want to silence your critics, give them a bone.
Give them something to do.
To keep them busy. An eating mouth cannot be a talking mouth, except when it's mine.
And then you find you can actually sit to the company of your enemies and you all getting something done, but they're busy with the new shiny toy you've given them.
And there you are.
Well, I guess we're pointing in some direction as we start off this conversation this morning. And so we're looking at political alignments. And it seems to be as though many dog has been given a bone to chew on. But these are also forming political alignments in the country, are they not?
They are forming alignments, certainly political alignments, perhaps for purposes of making the regime in power for the time being survive this season up to 2027, and perhaps beyond that, looking at the possibility that they could carry themselves into another future, which would be the second term for the current regime. And therefore, we can say that they are assembling, massing the troops, not just to keep the current dispensation intact within the troubled context in which it obtains, where the citizens are by and large not very happy if we look at the opinion polls that we have been seeing in recent times, but also beyond that, hoping that they could constitute themselves into a viable and formidable of the Pavlovian experiment. Pavlov, suppose he may have been Polish or something like that. Anyway, the scientist who was giving dogs meat and bones, and he would ring a bell at the same time, and the dogs would begin salivating. Then he carried on the experiment without the bones and the meat being there, ringing the bell, And to the sound of the bell, the dogs knew that it was time to salivate. So there's that conditioned reflex, and it doesn't matter that the dog owner may come.
Can we, sorry, Dennis, but do we finally say, I mean, we've been flirting with the idea for quite a while, and maybe flirting with the possibility, but then it is seemingly more true now that many a politician who is given a position is not interested in the development of its people or its land, but that what you can get.
The distinction has been made between the politician and the state with the tendering processes, kusema na kutenda.
Yeah, and yet, even when all this happens, the person who suffers the most is the citizenry, that Kenyan who has to get the services because the bone is dangled and you're there to please your master. Yet services does not get down to the people. So with all these alignments that we are seeing, the opposite of it is lack of services to Muluka, to Aseto City, and then Ndu. What would be the solution?
First, I think we need continuous civic education. When we wrote into our Constitution of Kenya 2010 matters that pertain to civic education, voter education, we did not do so out of levity. We did so out of the understanding that we need to engage all the time with the public, to sensitize the public to the reality that their choices matter. Their choices shape not just the destiny of the nation, they shape the destiny of individuals, they shape the destiny of your children tomorrow. Continuous voter education process. But we can see that IEBC has been sent into a state of permanent paralysis.
Intentional?
For intended reasons.
Do you think so? I mean, to hold you on to that, Barack, do you think that is an intentional position? Because if we know that constitutionally the IEBC is bound between one election and the next to ensure that the citizenry of the country is continually educated about issues having to do with elections, civic education, what should be happening in terms of your vote, how you get a card, because, it has to happen all over again. If that doesn't happen, if we can't even see that commissioners for an IEBC, which are needed at some level, that doesn't happen, how would you then jump to the next thought that would mean, well, then somebody is trying to make sure here that this doesn't happen? I can hoodwink Kenyans at the very last moment into an election. Exactly. That's where I'm going. That why would somebody do this intentionally? Why would you want to do something like that if it is showing that it is a conscious effort to keep people in limbo? What would I possibly achieve by a constitutionally...
Reddy Kilowatt used to say, see, I have worked all these hours for you. And he would show us what he had done for us. And he would say, pay. So this Reddy Kilowatt, so to speak, would come to us with a scorecard, a brag sheet, and tell us, I've done this. And probably they would not even need a brag sheet because we would already know that these people have done very well, and therefore we think we should renew their tenure. But this is about yourself. It is about the gravy train converting government, the institution of the executive in particular, into a gravy train, mopping up all other institutions and entities to serve this gravy train, which has got an owner who is also the captain, governor of the Central Bank of Uganda. Barack, you are now the head of the Uganda Medical Services. Without any reference to prior knowledge, prior experience, future relevance, That is where we are. And so IEBC becomes an instrument. It is instrumentalized for political purposes and politicized for instrumental purposes, that when the next election is around the corner, you can quickly cobble up IBC with the specific brief of declaring you the winner in that election. The rest of the things, like those issues, should be happening today. Today, we ought to be going through the procurement process, educating the public about the need to vote. One of the most dangerous things, or pronouncements, is when you hear someone saying that I have lost faith and I do not intend to vote again. It's extremely dangerous, but I think there are those who are very happy, the people wielding power. And so we should not nonetheless get into the space of surrender and cynicism. We must get into the space of encouraging the voices that speak to and against this kind of conduct.
Governments related to them. Then we come back to our own continent, and people who had this monolithic power, also they thought. It reminds one of Robert Burns' poem, of poems to a mouse. The best laid plans of men and mice. There's something called the role of chance that has this nasty habit of intervening in the best laid plans, because you've laid it out well. Someone seems to have orchestrated a plan to ensure that they will control everything to do the elections. That's precisely the point. It's when you think you've laid it out well and you've understood, and these are the expected outcomes, something
unknown winds of change that are going to blow in the coming times. Because when you say that we are going to stuff the boxes, when you say things like aende wapi, that we won when we were not in government, now we are in government, you are assuming that you are going to mobilize the instruments of violence against the people to accept whatever outcome. You go everywhere in this country. You see, one of the things that happen to people in high places is that they lose touch with reality. Someone like His Excellency President William Ruto has only direct and useful quality time with sycophants, fellows who sit around him, who know what he wants to hear, and who tell him what they know he wants to hear. He should unite in what is essentially a skunk regime, so that we are perpetuating a rotten journey to doom. Then we don't need that kind of unity, because that kind of unity is a conspiracy. The people whom City was talking about, who came up with the notion of dictator, were ancient Romans, and the first dictator was Julius Caesar, and they suspended parliament and gave all the power to run the affairs of state to an individual whom they called the dictator, and it was supposed to be a good terminology. Then some years later, many years later, we saw the Germans again suspending.
It ends up in you making decisions that have no bearing on the reality on the ground. And if I may just add to what you've said by appearing to offer a different opinion, the president is actually right when he says he's unifying us. It's inadvertent, but he is.
Yes, yeah. You could say that
inadvertently.
What he thinks is unity that he's doing is different from the reality of unity. It's what we would call a philosophical antinomy. There are two things that seem to contradict each other.
They seem to be diametrically opposed.
But
but everybody's speaking on them.
But they are actually both correct. That on the one hand, the president is unifying the political class at the very top. And he thinks that by so doing, he's unifying the country
The entire
to
citizen.
go with him. But the byproduct of what he's doing is that the country is actually uniting against him and that class of people.
And that formation that he's implementing. Yeah.
What's the danger in that when we look at the fact, or we look at what's happening here, that for the first time, well, maybe not the first time, but with as much vigor as we see it, that people are not talking about issues, to do with, I will not, engage with you on matters of tribe. I will not engage with you on matters of class. But we're saying, I will engage with you no matter who you are, because of the problems in which we see the nation at the moment and the manner in which it is being governed. Has not happened, not at this magnitude, for a very, very, very long time, at least not in Kenya. What's the danger of not being able to see, of having tunnel vision when it comes to this is what your people are saying? You may be hearing the noise, but you're not listening to the message. So even when you do make political appointments, when you have these political formations...
The danger is for one individual who is going to discover that he is on a lonely island. President William Ruto is sleeping in the middle of a revolution. He is a latter-day Rip Van Winkle, who will wake up one morning to find that the country moved and he's alone. If he had an iota of good people around him, whom he listens to, they would tell him to see how the space around him has begun crumbling. The space around him is disintegrating. People he thought he had are coming out to tell us that no, enough is enough.
Yeah.
We have...
Hey, we. Who is we? Sorry, Barack.
We who had formed ourselves around this candidate.
Okay, you who, if we say it in plain terms, you who had also thrown your support behind current President William Ruto.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I invite you to pay attention.
I just need to, in class sometimes.
To what I'm saying.
Yeah, you need to clarify certain matters.
I understand. As
Yeah.
a classroom teacher, I've got to do a lot of remedial work. So, we are together. Now, you see, when you get out of this place, you will see signboards out there pointing to different directions and destinations, and even telling you Mombasa that way. And it will tell you so many hundreds of kilometers away.
Yes.
And you'll find another one pointing towards Machakos and wherever. You cannot controvert those signboards. They are telling you the truth. And William Ruto was telling this country the truth.
But a charter that encompassed several sectors, education, health, infrastructure.
So,
within those charters.
so
all
it
those
looked
things
good. But when the person got into the house, he abandoned all that. As an honest person, I cannot hang in there and pretend that all is well. This is not what we wanted.
Okay, I must ask you at this point, Barack, because there's a lot of chatter at the moment from folks within and from folks outside on this very same matter, that you've gone down the road and you've seen, okay, for whatever reason, whether you've brought in people who are not original vision bearers, or if you were going down the road and you realized, hang on a minute, this is not the way that we said we were going to go. This is not the vehicle that we said we were going to employ for this thing. If everybody around you is mama bearer to now say, hang on, guys, actually, maybe we've gone wrong. Would there be a place for honesty to be played out here and say, okay, let's reroute? Because that's what, remember, when you're on a map now with technology and you're going in one direction.
As one of his advisors,
Yes.
quite early in the day, I saw that this thing
It's not going
is
to
going nowhere. This is not the government that we promised the people of this country. And I personally, quietly, voluntarily vacated that space because we must stay focused on the bigger agenda, which is the country. City, at this age, I'm not interested in toys. I'm not.
No?
No.
Okay.
I'm not interested in toys. I drive a small car out there. It is
It takes you from point A to B.
Toyota, which takes me from point A to B. My children, who are young professionals, drive the so-called state of